After making all-time highs last week, today the market's cooled off a bit. I'll break it all down, but before that, there is the closing bell with the S&Ps today down 18 points. We're getting a little bit of a lift in the final minutes of trade. Just taking a look at these S&P futures, down today about 20 points, struggled out the gates, and ultimately spent all day trying to find a recovery bounce. We're getting a little bounce here at the end. When we take a look at it on a daily, you can just see we've been on such a nice rip higher. Was Friday a temporary top? Some volume is picking up here. However, when we take a look at it on the SPX, we came into this week expecting 55 points. 55 up, which doesn't look like it's happening this week, was 42.40. However, 55 down is 41.31, which we're just about 30 points shy from that level. However, we are not there quite yet. So we're going to continue to see some selling into tomorrow's tape. Well, if we do see selling, it's going to be led by the Nasdaq. And when we take a look at the Nasdaq, today we can see it's down about 1%. And 4 of the last 3 trading sessions, the range has been picking up here quite a bit. You can see volume is elevated from Friday and Thursday. However, when we throw it on an expected move, the lower edge in the Nasdaq is going to play 13,744. So we're not quite there yet. We'll have to be careful. Maybe we tag it tomorrow, or maybe we're going to bounce higher. There's not much economic data coming out this week, so maybe this market cools off a bit and we hit that lower edge in this week's trade. But you can just see last week the Nasdaq was efficient. It was in between the expected move. I'm expecting the same this week, maybe slightly to the downside. Now, largely that's going to come down to what the bonds want to do. And when we take a look at the bonds, they're down about 1/3% today, and volume was relatively low. However, the bonds were down, which meant the TNX was up. It was up 1.78%, but I discussed on Friday, the Nasdaq has been pretty comfortable with the yields up in this range. The question becomes, are we going to see rejection in the bonds and they really roll over and put new lows in? If they do, we'll be sitting at this 176 very fast, making our way to 2. And that could be a shock to the Nasdaq. But when we just take a look at volatility, VIX futures today were up about 3.7%. However, they're rolling on Wednesday. It's a very poor metric. Taking a look at the VIX spot, putting in a wick there. And when we take a look at the VVIX, up 3.77% today, back over 110. We look at it intraday, and it got going, giving some of it back, but for the most part, elevated on the day. Now we even take a look at the Russell 2000. It was our worst performing index on the day, down 1.3%, but for the most part you can draw a line right through this Russell, and it's just kind of been consolidating, waiting for its cue to go higher. So we see what's going on in bonds, indexes, and volatility. What's happening in our sectors? The first thing I noticed, the sectors are almost all in the red. We see the healthcare sector that's up 2 basis points, resting near all-time highs, but that's about it. We see the XLE down 10 basis points, kind of hanging on here. The financials down about 1/3%. Even with yield up today, the financials are slowing down a bit. We see consumer staples down about 40 basis points, put a new high today, however, gave some of that back. We take a look at the Big 5, and it too put a new all-time high, however, notice that wick. But when we compare it to the XLK, broader technology, it's down 0.8%. So clearly we can see 0.8, 0.4, Big 5 doing slightly better, largely from Apple and Google help lifting it ever so slightly. But we even see industrials down 0.4%, and our worst performing sector today was the software stocks, down 1.6%. Really slowed down the Russell. As you can see, it's down 1.3%, but ultimately that was due to the rising yields. So going into tomorrow, it'll be interesting to see what is technology going to do. Is it going to continue to roll? Remember, 13,744 is the lower edge in the Nasdaq. We could potentially be hitting that lower edge this week. Just look at volatility expanding, which means we're more than likely to hit that level. It all depends on what news article is going to drop. But let's move on and take a look at our dollar index and see what's going on across the board in our commodities. And when we take a look at the dollar, we see it's down 0.5%. So with yields up 1.78%, the dollar is continuing to weaken, meaning other currencies are appreciating. We look at the euro, it's up about 0.5% today. We look at the pound, we can see the pound today is up over 1%. Even the yen today is up 0.57%. What does that mean for crude oil? Well, crude oil today was up 0.5%. So the dollar weakening is boosting some of our commodities. You can just see crude oil there, kind of consolidating around this 63 handle. However, gold today was down 0.5%. Go figure. Gold fell with the dollar weakening, yields rising. So gold's kind of hanging out in this upper 1700s levels, knocking on the door to 1800. It's going to be a hard hurdle for gold. And as for Bitcoin, down 9.5%. And I mentioned on Saturday, I'm expecting some volatility here very soon, and we got it. You can see we're still above 1 trillion at 53.5, so that's still a plus. However, I want to show you some of my charts, and we'll start with the Coinbase, and you can see the crossover right there. That's what I said. I said, watch out for the crossover. It signals volatility, up or down. It's not going to tell me the direction, but volatility happened. We can see that there on the 4-hour. We broke 59.4, and however, we held 51.9. You can see we wicked there on the 4-hour. Looking at this from a daily, where do I see other moves coming? Well, the 23rd of April is a crossover on the daily, so that could be a pretty sizable move. However, what's going to happen? My gut feeling is telling me we're going to come back down and test this 52,000, maybe somewhere in this area. So we could potentially be coming down here. Here's the crossover and then getting a quick sharp bounce. And if we do, those are great buying opportunities. You can even see the crossover here on May 4th as well as May 8th right there. Moving on to the Binance chart, these are just Fibonacci's. We'll put it on a 4-hour. You can see 57.8. We broke through that. We couldn't get back on the bounce. 54.4. We kind of held that. 52,000. Again, the wick there. We'll zoom in on an hour. So we're somewhere in between these Fibonacci's. So let's kind of just see if we can get up to maybe 58 over the night session. But ultimately, nobody knows. And when we look at Bitstamp, we see Bitstamp put on a 4-hour is kind of in no man's land here on a daily. There's a crossover there on the 14th. So there's going to be some big moves coming as well as there, May 4th. So we're going to see some big moves coming up here in Bitcoin. Maybe we calm down. We try to find a base due to a significant drop and then inch higher. We'll have to take it day by day. But April 23rd, get ready, guys, because it could be a big move for Bitcoin. There you have it for the stock market breakdown. So with not much economic data coming in this week, I'm not expecting much out of the broader market. Coming in with just 55 points of move in the SPX, again, that's not expecting much. My guess is we lean to the downside with the VIX on the rise. That could signal a lot of fear across the board. But ultimately, we've been on a straight rocket ride up. Cooling off for 1 week is a positive thing. Reset some of the indicators, and ultimately, we have some big earnings coming out of the Big Five in next week's trade. Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, Facebook. We'll have to see how these guys trade this week, leading up into a big earnings week in next week. It's going to dictate a lot of the moves across the board. If they just crush it, the 5 of them, the Nasdaq is going to go higher, and it will drag the S&Ps with it. But if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like. It means a lot when you guys can show some support. And if you're watching me for the first time, I do these breakdowns daily. Show some love and hit that subscribe button. It really means a lot if you guys can do that. Any comments or questions for me? Where do you guys see the market? Is it topping? Are we going to have a red week across the board? Or what are some stocks you guys are looking at? Love to hear from you guys. But on that note, I will see you in tomorrow's video. Have a great night. Take care. Peace.